He walked into the bank with dignity, and they mocked him as if he were nothing. Carl Hayden, the bank's imposing security guard, saw Samuel Holloway, an elderly black man dressed in worn clothes, and immediately saw trouble. But when they picked Samuel, they didn't know who they were messing with. They didn't know he was the forgotten founder of the First National Bank, a man whose life's work had been buried beneath prejudice and greed for decades. What came next wasn't just justice. It was a reckoning powerful enough to rewrite history and restore dignity once denied. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from and make sure to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. Inside the grand marble lobby of the First National Bank, sunlight streamed softly through tall windows, illuminating faces frozen in shock, as Samuel calmly opened an old canvas sack, ready to unveil a truth that would silence every cruel laughter, exposing secrets buried far too long in darkness. In the quiet, pristine lobby of First National Bank, where marble floors gleamed under ornate chandeliers and whispers felt loud as thunder, a frail old man named Samuel Holloway walked in with deliberate steps. His coat was threadbare, patched lovingly by hands that had known more struggle than comfort, his shoes worn thin from endless journeys no one knew about. Samuel paused, drew a deep breath, and spoke with gentle conviction. "This bank belongs to me." A silence heavier than disbelief quickly dissolved into mocking laughter, the kind cruelly reserved for those whose only crime was daring to step beyond society's harsh lines. Why is dignity so easily dismissed when wrapped in poverty? But Samuel stood calm, unmoved by ridicule, holding firmly to an old canvas sack as whispers slithered around him like vipers. A sharply dressed woman clutched her purse tighter, suspicion etched on her face, while behind the polished counters young clerks exchanged amused smirks, dismissing him as a confused wanderer, lost and harmless. Watching from across the lobby, Carl Hayden, the imposing security guard whose stern face rarely softened, moved toward Samuel with irritation disguised as authority, hand resting ominously on his holster. The entire bank seemed to freeze, curiosity and tension battling silently as Carl growled softly, "Old man, jokes like yours aren't welcome here. Best leave now." Samuel lifted his eyes, unafraid, and in his gaze rested not anger, but quiet resilience, the kind of strength forged by years of silent endurance. What power, unseen and unspoken, might he possess beneath that worn-out exterior? With careful, deliberate motions, Samuel loosened the sack's frayed strings, eyes fixed steadily upon Carl, who momentarily hesitated, confused by the unwavering calm. And as the worn fabric fell open, the laughter faded abruptly into stunned silence, because sometimes truth lies quietly hidden until someone brave enough, or desperate enough, steps forward to reveal it. From inside Samuel's tattered sack emerged an aged, leather-bound ledger, its edges frayed, bearing faded golden letters reading, "First National Bank, 1951. As if releasing ghosts trapped within its worn pages, Samuel lifted it solemnly, allowing the heavy book to speak silently on his behalf. Murmurs rippled through the lobby, confusion mingling with curiosity, but before anyone could fully absorb the gravity of Samuel's revelation, Carl Hayden, gripping his authority like armor, stepped forward sharply, eyes narrowed in disdainful suspicion. "You expect us to believe this dusty old book makes you the owner?" Carl challenged, voice ringing harshly through the marble hall. Samuel didn't flinch. Instead, he gently opened the ledger, turning the yellowed pages with the reverence reserved for something sacred, until his finger rested on a signature unmistakably identical to his own. His voice, steady and resolute, resonated clearly. "My name is Samuel Holloway. I founded this bank 70 years ago, but greed and prejudice took it away from me, burying my name and dignity beneath lies." A tense silence followed, broken only by the nervous shuffling of feet. Samuel's eyes quietly surveyed the room, a silent plea for justice meeting their collective gaze, yet most looked away, uncomfortable in the harsh glare of a history they had never questioned. How often do we turn away from truths that demand our courage? James Radcliffe, the polished young bank manager, cautiously approached, his face masked in polite skepticism, voice smooth yet distant as he responded, "Sir, there must be a misunderstanding. This bank was founded by the Sterling family. There is no record of your involvement." Samuel met his eyes unflinchingly, quietly closing the ledger, holding it close to his chest as if protecting his last shred of proof against the cold denial around him. In that fragile pause, one could sense the crushing weight of his lifelong struggle, the depth of betrayal he had carried silently through the decades. What becomes of a man whose truth is buried alive? Samuel stood firm, his silence louder than words, waiting patiently for the seeds of doubt he'd planted to grow, knowing that truth, once unearthed, could never be quietly hidden again. Samuel's unwavering presence at the heart of the bank began unraveling hidden prejudices in slow motion. Whispers twisted into harsher mutters, and the disbelief in the lobby hardened into scornful suspicion. Carl Hayden, frustrated by Samuel's defiance and impatient with the disruption, barked out sharply, "This farce ends now. You're disturbing our customers," his hand tightening reflexively around the holster at his side. Yet Samuel did not waver, and instead reached once more into the old canvas sack, this time pulling out neatly bound stacks of faded currency, each bearing the unmistakable stamp of the bank's original emblem, a logo long since redesigned, but familiar enough to evoke collective astonishment. For an instant, silence gripped the lobby so powerfully it seemed to erase even the sound of breathing. How often does the truth silence a room, speaking louder than any words could? Bank manager James Radcliffe paled visibly, his polite mask slipping into genuine shock as he took an involuntary step backward, eyes locked onto the bundles of ancient bills Samuel presented. These were locked away, forgotten by everyone but me. Samuel spoke, his voice firm yet tinged with quiet sorrow. "These represent my sweat, dreams, and dignity, stripped away not because I failed, but because society refused to accept that a black man could own something valuable." Each of Samuel's words fell heavily, cracking open hidden corners of discomfort within the hearts of everyone present. James glanced helplessly around, searching faces for support but finding only confusion and an unsettling guilt reflected back at him. Samuel gently set the bundles onto the polished counter, an offering of undeniable evidence, his dignified gesture turning the mocking laughter of moments before into shameful silence. Can you imagine the strength it takes to confront an injustice endured silently for decades? Samuel stood resolute, fully aware of the power inherent in patience and truth, aware that the barriers once built by prejudice and greed were now slowly fracturing under the weight of undeniable reality. He knew this was only the beginning of a fight long overdue, and though his body was frail, his spirit had never felt stronger. As the undeniable evidence rested on the polished marble counter, the silence deepened painfully into a storm of uncomfortable truths. Carl Hayden, unsettled yet fiercely protective of the established order, stepped forward again, his expression twisted with anger and confusion, hand trembling visibly on his holster as he growled, "I've warned you enough, Holloway. Leave now, or I'll have no choice but to arrest you." Samuel, his presence quiet yet unyielding, met Carl's heated gaze with eyes that held the weight of 1,000 injustices, silently endured, and calmly replied, "I'm not here to cause trouble, Mr. Hayden. I'm here to reclaim what was unjustly stolen from me." The intensity in Samuel's quiet words resonated deeply, each syllable cutting through decades of denial, exposing a raw nerve of guilt beneath the surface. Is there any weapon stronger than quiet determination in the face of blind authority? James Radcliffe, caught between duty and conscience, struggled visibly as sweat beaded his forehead, his composure dissolving rapidly as he reached hesitantly for the ledger, turning pages anxiously, scanning desperately for flaws. But each faded signature only confirmed Samuel's truth further. "If this is authentic," James finally admitted shakily, his voice barely a whisper yet clear enough to echo painfully throughout the lobby, "then the history we believed was built on a lie." Murmurs erupted like tiny fires around the room, ignited by shock and disbelief, the carefully constructed reality crumbling with every moment Samuel stood, unwavering in his resolve. Carl, sensing control slipping dangerously from his grasp, suddenly drew his firearm halfway from its holster, voice cracking with urgency. "I said leave now!" The room collectively gasped, frozen in collective dread, eyes darting fearfully from Carl's trembling hand to Samuel's quiet, unflinching stance. What would you have done if faced with this moment of truth? Would you stand silent or step forward? Samuel, undeterred, gently raised his hands, empty yet powerful, silently signaling peace, his gaze never breaking contact, as if silently asking Carl whether he truly wished to confront not just an elderly man, but the truth itself. In the suffocating stillness, as Carl's trembling fingers lingered dangerously close to disaster, Samuel's gentle yet fearless stance resonated profoundly, silently confronting every soul in the lobby. James Radcliffe, heart pounding in a rhythm of panic and newfound clarity, realized he could no longer hide behind polite neutrality. Summoning courage from an unfamiliar depth within himself, James stepped forward decisively, placing his body carefully but deliberately between Carl's weapon and Samuel's dignified resolve. "Carl," James spoke with surprising steadiness, his voice vibrating with quiet strength. "This isn't the way. He deserves to be heard." Carl flinched, disbelief shadowing his face as he stammered. "You're siding with him? Risking everything we've worked for?" James paused, feeling the weight of Carl's accusation, yet finally understanding that the truth Samuel carried was far heavier, more vital than the fragile security built on lies and prejudice. Have you ever felt the burden of choosing between easy silence and difficult honesty? Turning towards Samuel, James extended his hand respectfully, accepting the ledger and the ancient currency, quietly declaring, "Mr. Holloway's evidence deserves a fair examination, regardless of what it might cost us." The tension in Carl's arms slowly eased, gun lowering reluctantly, his authority weakened by the quiet revolution taking shape before his eyes. Samuel nodded gently, gratitude shimmering softly in his aged eyes, recognizing James's courage as the critical turning point the decades of silent struggle had patiently awaited. Around them, whispers turned into subdued confessions, reflections of deep shame rising slowly to the surface, confronting those who had stood passively by, unknowingly complicit in injustice. In that profound pause, Samuel felt something shift, not only within the polished marble walls of the First National Bank, but within hearts and minds. A quiet reckoning more powerful than any force Carl's gun could threaten. For the first time, Samuel Holloway allowed himself a fragile smile of hope, because he knew that once truth is recognized, even quietly, it cannot remain hidden or denied. In the profound quiet that enveloped the lobby, a subtle yet powerful shift occurred, spreading like a gentle wave through each witness. Young Emily Carter, usually reserved behind her teller's counter, took the first tentative step forward, eyes downcast in quiet reflection as she softly picked up one faded bill from the counter and gently placed it back before Samuel, whispering humbly, "I believe you, Mr. Holloway, and I'm sorry." Her actions, small yet monumental, broke through the collective silence, inspiring others to move. Hesitant at first, then with increasing resolve, as one by one bank employees followed Emily's courageous lead, each placing an aged note gently before Samuel, their eyes silently asking forgiveness. Samuel stood quietly, deeply moved, tears softly tracing lines on his weathered cheeks as he absorbed this overdue acknowledgement, understanding at last that his decades of pain had never been entirely unnoticed, merely silently ignored. Isn't it astonishing how quickly one act of courage can break a lifetime of silence? Even Carl Hayden, shaken deeply by this unexpected wave of conscience, reluctantly returned his weapon to its holster, his gaze lowered in conflicted shame. James Radcliffe, buoyed by the quiet rebellion now unfolding, met Samuel's gaze firmly and declared openly, "We owe you more than apologies. We owe you justice, and I promise we will set this right." Those words resonated deeply, spreading hope like sunlight through Samuel's heart, acknowledging wounds long hidden beneath quiet resignation. Around the room, whispered confessions emerged softly, like leaves rustling in a new breeze, a chorus of quiet admissions acknowledging complicity through silence and prejudice. Samuel's presence, quiet yet profoundly powerful, had cracked open not only the hidden past, but the hearts of everyone present, allowing light to enter places long darkened by fear and apathy. Standing amid this gentle revolution, Samuel felt a peace he'd scarcely dared hope for, knowing finally he was no longer alone in his lifelong fight. Would you have the courage, if faced with injustice, to be the first to step forward and break the silence? In the weeks that followed, Samuel Holloway's story rippled quietly yet powerfully through the community, spreading from whispered conversations in coffee shops to front-page headlines, igniting a wider conversation about dignity, truth, and the silent burdens of history. The First National Bank found itself confronting not just a legal battle, but an ethical reckoning that shook its very foundations. James Radcliffe courageously led this charge, facing fierce opposition from powerful interests deeply rooted in tradition and prejudice, yet never wavering from his commitment to justice. Despite relentless pressure and subtle threats from those desperate to bury the truth again, James stood resolute, inspired daily by Samuel's quiet courage, a courage that had awakened something profound within him. Samuel watched patiently, fully aware the fight was no longer just his own, but now shared by many, each step forward echoing with newfound strength and purpose. Have you ever realized how powerful one voice, speaking the truth, can be in shaping the course of history? After months of investigations and intense public scrutiny, the undeniable evidence Samuel provided finally forced the bank's board, and even the proud Sterling family, into a humbling admission of wrongdoing. An acknowledgement Samuel had awaited for decades. Standing before the community, James publicly restored Samuel's name to its rightful place, not only as the true founder, but as a living symbol of resilience, dignity, and quiet determination. At long last, Samuel Holloway felt the heavy chains of injustice slip away, replaced by a warmth of fulfillment and peace he had scarcely believed possible. Yet he knew this victory belonged not just to himself, but to everyone brave enough to question the comfortable silence surrounding injustice. Samuel's quiet triumph offered a profound lesson. Justice delayed is still justice worth fighting for, and dignity, though easily dismissed, remains the strongest armor one can wear against prejudice. How many injustices might you quietly confront, armed only with courage and truth? Sometimes, life's greatest battles are fought quietly, within the patient heart of those who hold on to truth, dignity, and courage, even when injustice feels overwhelming. Samuel Holloway's journey teaches us gently yet powerfully that even decades of silence cannot erase the strength of integrity. Each of us, regardless of age or circumstance, has faced moments when speaking out seemed harder than bearing silent pain. Yet Samuel reminds us that true strength lies not in power or wealth, but in our unwavering commitment to what is right. His quiet resilience shows how one honest voice can eventually bring light to hidden wrongs, inspiring others along the way. Perhaps the message for us all is this: it is never too late to reclaim our voice or dignity, and no truth, however buried or forgotten, remains hidden forever. Let us find comfort and hope in knowing that our quiet courage, gentle kindness, and simple honesty will always outlast prejudice and injustice, leaving behind a legacy far more precious than any wealth, one rooted deeply in compassion, respect, and genuine humanity. Samuel Holloway stood silently by the window of the First National Bank, sunlight gently warming his worn hands. It was a quiet power, profound and deeply healing, felt in the stillness after the storm had passed, leaving behind not applause, but peace. Justice had come slowly, not in a triumphant shout, but in quiet acknowledgement, in humble gestures and heartfelt apologies offered softly yet sincerely. In the days ahead, the community would come together, committed to rebuilding trust, rewriting history with honesty and care, ensuring Samuel's courage and dignity would inspire generations to confront prejudice wherever it quietly lingered. His story, no longer hidden, would live on as a gentle reminder that strength lies not in loud voices, but in unwavering truth spoken softly and persistently. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to Echoes of Racism so these voices don't fade into silence. In the meantime, I've chosen 2 stories I think will move you just as much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.